Now we're just going to do a couple of test slides, doing a risk assessment the HSE and NEBOSH way. In this module, we're going to look at my actual live policy guidance and risk assessment for ladders. This is an actual risk assessment I've done not that long ago, the 4-part health and safety risk assessment. We'll be going through that. Also, just looking at that little bit of an overlap with ISO 31000 and 45, but mainly 31,000. So as we move through, HSE template, no matrix, no rating of risks, and not recording any residual risks. However, others will use a risk assessment that use a matrix, but they will use words, and they will also record that residual risk. And others also will use the risk matrix using numbers. So it's really important to understand the benefits and disbenefits of both, I should imagine. Risk criteria and risk appetite I'm pushing through. So risk criteria such as severity statements, likelihood statements, action tables, they record severity, don't they? They give us numbers sometimes, and as I've just said, sometimes with just words, but they are a direct record of that risk appetite, how much risk a company is willing to take in pursuit of its objectives. What we have to identify is, and understand I should say, look at the difference in the reds. They're not the same risk criteria, that is, severity statements, likelihood statements, they really matter. And they can be different, so who wrote yours? There are pros and cons. What we shouldn't be doing is blindly using it though, because red means stop, but at different times. So it's really important that we check that out. The 4 NEBOSH risk assessment elements. Background, we've got the risk assessment itself, we've got the prioritization of actions and justification, and then that review. Now, what I like about this, and which is why I use this model when I can, that is because look at it there. It actually, the risk assessment, even though we know it as a practical risk assessment, it's actually risk management because it's got that communication in it. It's got that review. So if we look at the 6 principles of risk management through ISO 31000, scope of context and criteria, communication and consultation, the actual risk assessment, recording and reporting, which is what we're doing, putting in the risk treatment, that's that justifications for actions, and then that monitoring and review. So undoubtedly, not the framework, undoubtedly we can see that overlap. The NEBOSH method gives us that overlap with ISO 31000 risk management process. It all fits because it makes sense. So that is that 4-step method, or 4-element I should say. So we can see the NEBOSH template, very similar to the HSE template. The HSE got done added on the end. And then we can see the template that I use, sort of the one that I'm using in this course, my example. I do 1 or 2 different things, i.e. I put the risk number, I find that's beneficial. I put the steps in, I find that beneficial. And my risk assessment, the one that we're going to be going through, is actually a live risk assessment. So if we look at part 1, scope, context and criteria, that's what I'm calling mine, scope, context and criteria. And as we go through mine, which is a live one, you will see I've broken down interviews, observation, document review. And that's how was the assessment conducted. As an auditor, that's what you do. So I follow that process. I like that process. The risk assessment itself is just for working at height from ladders and step ladders. And that's been explained in the scope, the context and the criteria. I'm saying there, this assessment covers work at height for work undertaken specifically on lean-in ladders. And it does not include contractors. I think that's really important. All roads go back to the risk assessment. So therefore, we shouldn't be cramming everything in my opinion, at all. So I've also got some interesting things. I've got the primary issues, who might be harmed and how, primary, and then secondary. So I do add some different things in. That's just my way of doing things. I like it this way. The justifications for extra controls and prioritise risks. What have I got in there slightly different? Anything different in there? Not necessarily. But the monitoring, risk assessment, review and monitoring, that's a huge part of That's a huge part of ISO 31000, that monitoring and review, so we can see the similarities undoubtedly. Okay, so that's it. That is just a quick, very quick overview of the risk assessment course that follows the 4 NEBOSH elements, but using my own template. That's it. Thanks for watching.